we bring together you, our Pico Robertson neighbors, and others in partnership with many local, national, and global Jewish organizations, alongside elected officials and law enforcement personnel. Thank you. We want to hear from you, we want to answer your questions, and we want to work together to ensure our safety and our security. Although we live in complex and often scary times, we as a Jewish people and we as residents of the city of Los Angeles are strong and resilient. Thank you.
Thank you, Orna. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rabbi Noah Farkas, President, CEO of the Federation, and it is an honor to be here tonight. Again, I want to thank Rabbi Safran for your community, for being so open to us and to allowing us to use this beautiful space. In fact, the last time I was here, my son had a robotics competition here on a Sunday morning, and it's nice to use this space for a multiplicity of reasons, so thank you for that. I also want to thank Orna and to our wonderful lay leadership at the Federation, including the board, many of whom are here tonight, that support this work of building and supporting a flourishing Jewish community. And I also would like to thank my staff, who have worked tirelessly under a very, very, very tight deadline to pull this off. And kol hakavod to all of you, and I'm very proud of you. When the shooter was arrested on Thursday night, after 2 days of violent anti-Semitism in Los Angeles, during his arrest, he said, "I was looking up kosher supermarkets on Yelp." Thank God neither of the victims died. But what's clear is that he's hunting Jews. The fear we feel is real. The horror we're experiencing is real. Our feelings of anger and fear have grown intensely here in LA in the wake of last week's abhorrent anti-Semitic shootings, and we know we're not alone. All around the world's oldest hate is once again threatening the safety and security and well-being of Jews. It's being stoked by extremist groups, social media, political leaders, and celebrities. And according to the American Jewish Committee's most recent survey on anti-Semitism, 69% of American Jews have experienced anti-Semitism online in the last 12 months, the vast majority of whom are our young adults. 1 in 4 Jews in America have now changed their behavior out of fear of anti-Semitism, whether by refraining from wearing religious items or not going to synagogue. The last 10 years have seen the most violence perpetrated against the Jewish community in a century. From Charlottesville to Poway to Squirrel Hill to Brooklyn to Colleyville to here in LA. We have been assaulted, we have been beaten, we have been kidnapped and held hostage, and now we've been shot. We know from our long history that hate speech leads to hate crime. What begins with words often ends with bullets. In 1841, a Jewish tailor named Jacob Frankfurt moved to the Pueblo of Los Angeles as a refugee to make life out west. And like many Jews before him, he left Europe because of anti-Semitism in search of a new life. In 1850, Morris Goodman, another refugee, was sitting on the community council of the Pueblo when California was adopted into the Union of the United States, making Goodman a charter member of the LA City Council. And the famous Joseph Newmark, who arrived in LA in 1854 to escape his own anti-Semitism, not only became successful in the movie industry, but he established the first chartered charity in the city, the Hebrew Benevolence Society, which is still around today as our partner, the Jewish Family Service. We have been in this city for a long time. We have contributed to its culture. We have contributed to its industry. We have contributed to its tax base. We have contributed to its very existence. Now more than ever, the Jewish community has over 750,000 adults living in our community. And yet 50% of those adults, have immigrants living in their household, where English isn't their first language. According to our latest data, 19% of the Jewish community has experienced significant financial troubles to the point where we are eligible for some federal benefits. The idea that we are all white, the idea that we are all rich, the idea that we live in only one area, all of the stereotypes are completely broken by the LA Jewish community. We are the most diverse Jewish community in the world. Beyond the Ashkenazi European heritage, we are home to the largest Russian-speaking and Ukrainian-speaking Jewish community outside of those countries. We are the largest Israeli-American diaspora living here in Los Angeles. And we have the largest Iranian-American Persian Jewish community living outside of Iran here in Los Angeles. And I want to welcome my friend Ellie, who is here from the Iranian American Jewish Federation. We are complex and we are diverse. And of all those 750,000 Jews that live here in LA, I will tell you that not a single one of us is willing to put a child at a school or a synagogue, at a camp or an agency if there isn't an armed guard standing out front. And that is because we are afraid, and we are angry, and we have to spend millions and millions of dollars in order for our children to feel secure and for us to feel secure and for us to express our First Amendment rights like every other American. Tonight we gather to hear from elected officials and law enforcement, but most importantly, I hope we're here to hear from you, our Jewish community, to express your concerns, to express your feelings, and to have our elected officials and community representative hear your voice. It's my pleasure now to open with the Devar Torah by our host rabbi, head of school, Rabbi Aryeh Sufrin, followed by our close partner, Rabbi Marvin Heyer of the Simon Wiesenthal Center.
Rabbi Farkas, thank you for the introduction, the meaningful remarks, and your leadership. And Orna, thank you for your leadership and for the opportunity for EULA to be partners and hosts this evening for this important evening for the community. It is a distinguished honor for EULA to host our mayor, Mayor Karen Bass, our city councilwoman, Katie Yaroslavsky, police chief Michael Moore, and the sheriff as well, along with assemblymen, congressmen, and elected officials that are here. We are extremely grateful for everything that you do, and we truly value your heroism on the streets for our entire community, so thank you very much. And a special thank you to Ivan Wolkind for your continued personal friendship and partnership and everything that you do through the Federation and CSI, caring for our schools and our community. We are forever indebted to you for your unbelievable support and care. You know, the Torah tells us in Exodus that when Moses left Pharaoh's palace in Egypt, he looked at the plight of his brethren and he saw a taskmaster, which was beating a Hebrew slave. And the verse says, and he turned his way and that way, vayifen ko v'cho. That Moses turned this way and that way, and vayar kien ish, he saw that there was nobody. There was no one there to defend the Jewish person getting beaten, so he stepped in to protect his brethren. Rabbi Yaakov Tzvi Mecklenburg, who lived in Germany in the 18th century, he suggests that when Moses looked around and saw that there was nobody there, it did not mean that nobody was physically there. Rather, it meant that no one in the community was willing to step up and help someone who was in need and help someone who was being persecuted and beaten. So Moses stepped in and saved his life. And while the interpretation speaks volumes about Moses' leadership, it is problematic in the sense that nobody else was there to step in and aid this Jewish person in need. And we've learned early in our history that silence of this kind can be a very loud and dangerous statement. The story of anti-Semitism is unfortunately no stranger to the Jewish people, from the Crusades to the Inquisitions to the Holocaust, to today's challenges on college campuses, and even now in our Pico Robertson neighborhood. You know, ladies and gentlemen, 44 years ago, EULA opened its doors to create a high school here in Los Angeles with the goal to inspire religious growth, Jewish pride, as well as challenge our students with a rigorous college prep program to create leaders for the 21st century and beyond. As with every school, the school colors unites and rallies a school community. Look around. As you can see by the walls here in the Sampson Center, EULA's colors are black and yellow. It's pretty obvious. And the question is, why black and yellow? You see, Rabbi Marvin Heyer of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, who founded EULA, he writes in his biography that during World War II, a time in our history where 6 million Jews and over 1 million children were murdered for being Jewish, the colors black and yellow had symbolized the infamous Juden star that the Nazis forced Jews to wear. So Rabbi Heyer, when opening the doors of EULA, wanted those colors to be redefined. He wanted the colors of black and yellow for the next generation of EULA students to not be victims or show weakness or darkness, but transition the next generation of leaders from weakness to strength, from victims to leaders, from darkness to light. You see, tonight we are reminded that anti-Semitism still exists, even in our own backyard. However, as a school, along with our magnificent Jewish schools locally and nationally, and I recognize my colleagues who are here today, we work tirelessly to fight anti-Semitism with our main weapon, which we call education. As Confucius says, if you plan for a year, plant rice. If you want to plan for a decade, plant a tree. But if you want to plan for a century, educate a child. With that being said, we have to remember the story that Moses experienced. When he turned this way and that way, when he saw there was no person out there, there was no ish, there was no man, he stepped up. And however heroic that was, I'm thankful that tonight, unlike what Moses experienced, where he had no one to turn to, we do have who to turn to. We have support. We have the mayor who's here that we can turn to for that support and leadership. We have assemblymen, congressmen, law enforcement, city council, and other elected officials. We have the Federation, we have Simon Wiesenthal Center, the Consul General. We have who to turn to. And I want everyone here behind me to know that we value, our community values and appreciates your friendship, your support, your care for the Jewish community. And we are grateful that we can turn to you this evening to share our voices, because the truth is we need more. And we know that you understand we need to partner together to accomplish more. To our community this evening, thank you for sharing your voices, of course, in a manner that is a Kiddush Hashem. Thank you for representing our community, and thank you for coming together, because together we will be stronger, together we won't be afraid, and together we will succeed as one strong, unified community. It is my honor to call up Rabbi Marvin Heyer, founder and CEO of the Simon Wiesenthal Center and the Museum of Tolerance.
Thank you very much. What would Simon Wiesenthal say? if he were alive today. We are in troubling times. Every day, more hate, vandalism, senseless violence, even in broad daylight, with no stop. First, that each of us, each person, can make a difference. Simon Wiesenthal did. When the Nazis murdered 89 members of his family, even though he was an architect by profession and knew absolutely nothing about standing up to murderers, he became a Nazi hunter, brought 1,100 Nazi war criminals to justice, more than any agent ever did, working for the FBI, CIA, British intelligence, French intelligence. As the great thinker of the 20th century, Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik pointed out so brilliantly, he asked this question: how is it possible when the Almighty freed the Israelites? It took much more than a year, more than 1 year. But when Dwight David Eisenhower launched the D-Day invasion in 1944, it took only 6 months. How is that possible? How was Eisenhower faster than God? So the great thinker Rabbi Soloveitchik says, the answer is very simple. The earth is our world. Men and women are responsible for what happens here every day, not God. This is not God's world. If we sit back and do nothing, watching the faithful at synagogues, churches, and mosques attacked, then we are the accomplices. Then it's our fault, not God. That is the reason why God took longer than Ike, because God said to us, Hashemayim Shemayim Lashem, the heavens belong to God. The Oretz Nosan Livnei Adam, but the earth belongs to man. If men and women are not prepared to do anything, God won't help us. When you have organized hate, a society in crisis, and technology, anything is possible. But we live in the world's greatest democracy. Over the last 30 years, 7.5 million people who visited the Museum of Tolerance have read these words that Simon Wiesenthal uttered when he received the United States' highest honor, the Congressional Gold Medal. So Simon then wrote, "Freedom is not a gift from heaven. It is something you have to fight for each and every day. So let's join the fight for our families, for our communities, for our beloved Los Angeles. Let's fight anti-Semitism and hate and prove to the Almighty that we are worthy custodians of the beautiful world He has gifted us. Amen."
Thank you, Rabbi Heyer and Rabbi Safran, for your moving words. There are a number of elected officials here tonight, some of whom are not going to be speaking but should be recognized, but they are here to listen to you. That includes Assembly Member Rick Zabor is here. Nice to see you, Rick. City Council President and our good friend Paul Krikorian is here. Thank you for coming. As well as Beverly Hills City Council person Dr. Sharona Nazarian is here. There you are. Good to see you. But it's my pleasure now to call on our chief executive of our city, a good friend of the Jewish community, and a light for us to follow, Mayor Karen Bass.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I am glad to be here with you today in solidarity, but sad that we're meeting for this occasion. I want to repeat some things that I said the other day because I believe that they are that significant. Let me just say, when anti-Semitism crawls out of the shadows, make no mistake, Angelenos from every community stand united to stamp it out and to ensure that justice is served. I repeat what I've said for many years. Anti-Semitism has no place in Los Angeles, and I'm grateful to see my fellow elected officials and law enforcement leaders here today locking arms with Jewish leaders against hateful acts in our community. Our Jewish community was terrorized, and that terror was felt across Los Angeles. First, we had one shooting, then a second, and we have no way of knowing if it's going to stop. And I actually look at it like it's been an escalation that started with flyers over the weekend, banners across the freeway, and now a shooting. And that's why it is so important that we act aggressively and immediately at the first sign of anything. I want to work with the community specifically to look at how we can proactively get on top of these things when they happen, whether it's cameras, whether it's license plate readers, whatever. But we need to make sure that we do everything to stop this. I have heard people say that they were afraid to walk in the neighborhood to worship this past Sabbath. I've also heard people, including one of the victims, say that nothing would keep them away from services. The fact is, no one should have to face that choice. And so today, we're not just here to stand in solidarity against last week's shootings. We are here locked arms against all forms of hate, bigotry, and discrimination, because anti-Semitism goes against the values of our city and goes against our humanity. Justice will prevail in this case and across Los Angeles. I hope that the Jewish community, justifiably concerned about recent attacks, will take some comfort from the focus of all levels of law enforcement on these events, including the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the LA Sheriff, and LAPD Chief. I want you to know that I don't just look at this community as the Jewish community. This is my community. This is right where I grew up. And as soon as I heard about the shootings, I and my staff reached out and spoke to community leaders, religious leaders, and our councilwoman, Yarslowski. In my conversations, we discussed how the community was on edge. This past week, as I said before, the Pico Robinson community was terrorized. Anti-Semitism and similar terror is tragically on the rise across our city and across our nation. But I want you to know that on behalf of the city of Los Angeles and my administration, I am resolute against hate, and we have made it a chief component of our public safety agenda. And I know that LAPD, the FBI, and the U.S. Attorney's Office share in that mission. In addition to vigorous enforcement, among my priorities is to assure that people who fall victim to less high-profile anti-Semitic and hate crime attacks have the knowledge and resources to report these incidents, which will help protect the rights of every Angelenos to live safely and freely. I want to say again, when anti-Semitism crawls out of the shadows, we must make no mistake. It will be stamped out, it will be stamped out aggressively, and it will be stamped out completely. Thank you.
Just want to remind everyone that you have a note card on your seat. There's a pen somewhere around you. If you start writing questions down and pass them in to various Federation staff members, we will get to them just as soon as we're able to get to the question and answer section. There are a number of elected officials who are going to say a few words after Mayor Bass, including our local city councilwoman, Katie Yaroslavsky.
Good evening. I've spoken with many of you over the past few days, and I share your fear, your anger, your frustration, and your resolve. It's a great comfort to be in community with you all tonight. Thank you for coming. I want you to know that as your councilwoman, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure our community is safe. That's why at tomorrow morning's City Council meeting, I'll be introducing a motion to secure funding to expand the Jewish Federation's Community Security Initiative, which it sounds like, based on the applause, you know what it is. It provides security support services and training, which is absolutely crucial to Jewish institutions across Los Angeles. I was with my family Thursday evening and my 8-year-old's winter open house. He attends a nearby Jewish elementary school. And one of the moms confided to me at dinner that she'd been nervous about coming because the perpetrator hadn't yet been caught. She wasn't alone. And even now that this particular individual has been apprehended, the unease remains, because we know this isn't the end of it. As a people, we know we always have to be vigilant, but the unease we feel in our city, in Los Angeles in 2023, for crying out loud, is deeply disturbing and wholly unacceptable. As hard as it might feel right now, we know that we can't let hatred of others define who we are as a community. I know that that's easier said than done. Every morning when I walk my second grader in his kippah to Jewish school with the security guards, the locked gates, the cameras, I worry. We all have our version of that. But we do it every day. When we walk to shul or enter a kosher market or a local Jewish community space like this one, we're taking part in a centuries-long act of defiance. In effect, we're saying we're here, we belong here. We keep showing up proudly as Jews, and I'm so grateful to be part of this community. I want to thank my elected colleagues and law enforcement for being here tonight, for showing up for our community, and for your allyship. We are all so much stronger when we go this road together. And like all the seemingly intractable problems we're facing as a society, including hate, we cannot solve this alone. We all have to be working together across our respective levels of government. And so I'm grateful to each of you for being here tonight. I'm grateful to all of you for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Member, and for your commitment to helping secure the Jewish community with your motion at City Council tomorrow morning. I know I speak on behalf of the Federation, but the Jewish community, how appreciative we are. Representing us in Washington, D.C. is Congresswoman Sydney Kamlager-Dove. Please.
Well, I want to thank the Jewish Federation for hosting this town hall. I want to thank my fellow elected officials for being here with me, and I want to thank all of you for showing up, because it truly is an act of resistance to be here. You know, every day I wake up, I think of a saying that James Baldwin wrote to Angela Davis when she was in jail. And he said, "They will come for me in the morning if they came for you last night." It seems like every single day they are coming for us. That is a horrible thing to have to think about when you live in a progressive, forward-thinking, diverse, active city like Los Angeles. And yet it is true. Why should we be frightened? Going to synagogue, going to school, going to the grocery store, going to the park. I am in Washington, D.C. The few weeks I have been there, we have had folks debate and pass bills allowing us to bring firearms and explosives to committee. We have voted down protections against the LGBTQ, the Jewish, the African American, and Muslim communities. I had a colleague of mine in an oversight committee get anti-Semitic and death threats because he had the nerve to question Twitter. If it comes at the top, it is trickling down into all of our communities. So while it was so nice to have people come up and say, thank you for coming here tonight, where else would I be? Sometimes showing up, standing up, speaking up with and for your allies is the least you can do. Misinformation, political, racial, ethnic violence, anti-Semitism, white supremacy, autocratic tendencies are on the rise in Washington, D.C. and across this country. I am sure the FBI is going to share some sobering statistics with you about their many programs and initiatives that have been done in partnership with local law enforcement, but I can tell you that 63% of religious hate crimes are motivated by anti-Semitism. It is growing in every part of the country. And while in the legislature, I, along with my colleagues here in the State Assembly, work to fund security grants, work to have laws to enhance charges against hate crimes, the antidote for hate is humanity. The antidote to hate is standing up and pushing past misinformation and fear and misunderstanding of people you don't understand or may not want to understand, so that you can remind everyone that the earth the rabbi was talking about is for all of us to live in and thrive on. I am committed to help reintroduce the No Hate Act. It was introduced in the 117th Congress. I'm going to be pushing to make sure it is reintroduced again in this Congress, and it will continue to fund local agencies, nonprofit organizations, and law enforcement to combat hate crimes that are happening in communities across this country. It will also enhance the charges that can be levied across folks who are committing hate crimes. And it will help resource additional education programs, because hate is a weed. Weeds grow and fester and strangle the light that so many of you work each and every day to make sure it burns bright. We all have a collective commitment, not just to our friends in the Jewish community, but to Los Angeles, to make sure that anti-Semitism is rooted out completely, and that we are standing in solidarity with our friends, with our allies, with our loved ones, to say never again. Thank you.
Representing some of us in Sacramento, Assembly Members Isaac Bryan and Jesse Gabriel.
It's always good to be with you, Jesse. I have to ask a favor from all of you. Please don't thank me anymore for being here. I'm supposed to be here. All of Los Angeles is here in this room. The state of California is here in this room. It doesn't have to be a shooting to be anti-Semitic violence. And anti-Semitism has been on the rise for years, and we have been documenting it. And in the state legislature, we've been fighting it. Last year, Jesse and I fought for $110 million to combat hate. We launched a statewide commission to fight against hate. Of that 110 million, 50 million went to those security grants. We're going to fight for those again this year. And Irving, we're going to get it right too. But it's clearly not enough. As the Congresswoman said, what roots out hate is humanity. And I would add to that, that hate can't survive where solidarity thrives. That's why we're all here today. And the last thing that I would say is that this particular form of violence is something my colleague knows very well, because nobody in the legislature is passing the kind of gun violence legislation that Jesse Gabriel is. And the reason he's doing that is because gun violence affects all of our communities. So while this anti-Semitic hate happened right here at home in Pico Robertson, know that the entire 55th Assembly District is standing here in solidarity. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I think I've had the opportunity to meet many of you, but for those that I haven't, my name is Jesse Gabriel. I represent the San Fernando Valley in the legislature. Thank you for the folks from the Valley. But more importantly, I chair the California Legislative Jewish Caucus. There are 18 of 120 members of the legislature who are members of the Jewish Caucus, and we work together to strengthen our community, to advance Jewish community priorities, and to work with other members of the legislature on issues that matter. And I want to start by thanking the Federation, by Rabbi Noah and Orna, and all of the leadership here from the ADL, the AGC, other indispensable partners for the work that they have done. We are trying to tackle the issue of anti-Semitism and hate. It is not a uniquely California phenomenon. We're lucky to have Julie Platt here from the Jewish Federation of North America. What I share with my colleagues up here in public service, most of whom are not Jewish, and irrespective of what Assemblymember Bryan said, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, and thank you to our law enforcement for being here. What I try to share with them is this creeping sense of uncertainty that I think so many of us have felt escalating in recent years. And like our councilwoman, I too have kids in Jewish school. And it's an incredible feeling to think about the fact that I have to take my two preschoolers and walk them through a metal detector on the way to school. Because when I went to shul and when I went to Hebrew school, that wasn't the case. The world has changed in very powerful ways, and we are all feeling that anxiety. But the message I want to share with all of you, and I think it touches so beautifully on what the rabbi said, is, Anachnu lo levad. We are not alone. We have people in this state and in this community that are standing with us and that care about us. We are so fortunate to have people from other faiths and backgrounds that are as committed to fighting anti-Semitism and all forms of hate and standing with all of us. And I will tell you, we, as the Assembly mentioned, we have put $100 million in the state budget in the last 2 years for the nonprofit security grant program, much of which has gone to protect day schools and synagogues and yeshivas and so many institutions in our community. And Assemblymember Bryan and Congresswoman Kamlager, when she was in the legislature, and Assemblymember Chavez Zabur, they helped us do that. And they deserve a very big round of applause for protecting our community. We have also passed multiple laws, thanks to the leadership of many members of our Jewish caucus and others, to strengthen hate crimes laws in the state of California, to give our law enforcement more tools and resources and training. Many of them will tell you that as bad and scary as the statistics are about hate crimes are dramatically underreported. That is the truth, and anyone who is paying attention to this will tell you that. We are facing much more hate even than the statistics tell us we are. But also, as the rabbi mentioned, we are thinking about not responding to this so that we are behind walls with security. We need more than that. And the ultimate antidote to hate, the ultimate antidote to what we call in Hebrew sinat chinam, as Rabbi Cook taught, is ahavat chinam, is boundless love, is the love that we can show, the pride that we can show in being Jewish, the refusal to hide our Judaism, to stand up proudly and to continue to operate in this world, and to also use education as a weapon. To use education as a weapon and as a way to protect our community. And as the Assemblyman mentioned, we have started a new commission on the state of hate, a statewide commission looking at the sources of all of this and how we can address it. And just last week, for the first time, the Governor's Council on Holocaust and Genocide Education met, and the governor was there for more than 2 hours, thinking about how we can do more and do better to teach young people about hatred and bigotry, but also about the opposite of that, the tolerance and empathy we need to build a better and safer world for our children and for all children in the state of California. So thank you to all of you for being here, and let's give another round of applause to all of our partners who are standing with us. Thank you.
like to welcome Supervisor Lindsay Horvath.
Thank you and good evening. I want to pick up where Assemblymember Gabriel left off and say, calling specifically on those who are not Jewish, who are not Israeli American. We have a duty and a responsibility living in community with one another to stand up, to speak out, and be in solidarity with our Jewish brothers and sisters. These anti-Semitic attacks are not a Jewish problem. They are the problem of hate in our community, a hatred that must be identified, must be defined, must be named, and must be rooted out. And that is why, at the anniversary of the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, I stood in solidarity with the Jewish Federation, with ADL, with AJC, with Israeli American Civic Action Network, and so many others, to call on our Sheriff's Department to help us understand what the Sheriff's Department is doing countywide to address this issue. We know the LA County Commission, Human Relations Commission, has also identified and provided statistics, but we must turn that data into action. And so I will be partnering with our Sheriff's Department. I know we will be investing county dollars countywide, and I will be investing our district's discretionary funding to ensure that our Jewish community centers are safe and secure, that the resources that are needed to protect people throughout Los Angeles County are readily available, and that we all stand together in solidarity to root out anti-Semitism wherever it exists. Thank you.
And now please welcome City Attorney Heidi Philstein Soto.
I'm going to be brief, I hope. The point of a hate crime is much more than to target an individual. The point of a hate crime is to terrorize our community. And that is why tonight is so incredibly important. I thank the Federation and I thank EULA for arranging this. For us to be able to stand up and say, we will not be afraid. We will come together. And we will come together at a Jewish school to oppose this attempt to separate, to oppose this attempt to terrorize. I want to thank Jeff Chemerinsky, who's here on behalf of our U.S. Attorney, Martina Estrada, for so quickly bringing felony charges. I want to thank Chief Moore for the outstanding work in all of the LAPD in really solving the crime. And I want to thank God for the survival of the members of our community who were shot. As your new city attorney, I said on the campaign trail, and I'm saying it here tonight, my commitment is that I'm making it a priority to address hate crimes and violence across the city as we build our united front against hate at every level of government. And I pledge to you, with all my heart, with all my soul, and with all my might, that I will fight hate crimes and crimes of anti-Semitism until they are stamped out. Thank you.
In just a couple of moments, we'll have an opportunity for a security briefing with some practical ideas about how we can stay safe and secure. But before that, we do have our first round of questions. And so my colleague Dan Gold in the back has collected some of those questions. If you have more questions, please pass them to Dan or to another Federation personnel, Becky over there in the back. And then we'll move from this section to security. Dan.
Thank you, Rabbi Farkas. Mayor Bass, question for you. What's the best way that the Jewish community, that we can gauge your administration's effectiveness in fighting anti-Semitism?
Thank you for the question. And let me just say that I think the best way is to come with me and plan together. What I don't want to do, because it's my basic philosophy and how one governs, I don't govern at the people. I govern with the people. And so we should sit down, thank you. we should sit down together and we should determine what it is that we do. I mentioned a couple of ideas. I agree with my colleagues that spoke before. I know that hate crimes are terribly underreported, and I believe there needs to be a PR campaign to educate Angelenos about how to report hate crimes. I also mentioned that I think that we need to figure out a way, whether it's cameras, more cameras, license plate readers. I want to deal with even the flyers that are out. You don't sit and wait until there's been a violent attack. You don't do that. But I would ask you first and foremost, develop the plan with me. Then you can hold me accountable.
One final question, Mayor Bass. A lot of people are asking about how your administration will work with law enforcement. You mentioned some of the technologies and things that you can add. What are other things that you're looking at policing as a whole? A lot of questions have come in for law enforcement, which we'll get into in a moment, but how's your administration looking at law enforcement specifically as it relates to policing our communities and helping keep our communities safe?
Well, I'm proud to say I have a very good relationship with our chief and our sheriff. We talk regularly, and one of the things that certainly needs to happen in LAPD, which we all agree to, is LAPD is down in its numbers, and we need to increase in the numbers. And maybe that's something to raise with the community here, because I don't know what the demographics are in terms of Jewish officers. I would imagine that are not enough. Well, not enough. You heard it from the chief, not enough. So, and there are communities, for example, in the Asian Pacific Islander community have absolutely registered, and by the way, in the African American community, have registered the lack of officers. And of course, we're facing a lot of retirements. So first and foremost, it's increasing the number of officers, and I know I have called on the chief several times in the 5 minutes that I've been mayor, okay? To increase patrols here and there, and to have different types of patrols, whether it's on bikes. I know here there were horses over the last few days. So I believe that we have had a relationship for many, many years when I was in Congress, and I know that that strong relationship will continue.
Thank you. And
anybody else?
I'm going to keep going. We have index cards that we collected.
Right ahead.
Okay, we're in this beautiful gym, black and yellow. We're in a school. What should we tell our children about anti-Semitism and the reality we are living in? Social media works with adults. What are we telling our children?
Well, I'm sure that there are many, many parents that are here, and I'm sure that that is a conversation that happens all the time. And I think that the most important thing to tell them is that we will stamp this out, that people are standing in support with the Jewish community, and that it is not going to be tolerated in Los Angeles, and that we're going to do everything we can to make sure that they feel safe.
thank you. A few folks have asked an alternative question to my previous question. What alternatives to just law enforcement? You mentioned sitting down with our community. There are some folks who have put in their questions that maybe more law enforcement creates more anxiety, doesn't always solve the problem in hand. Love for you to respond to that and the members of this community that are here that feel that way.
Sure, absolutely. Well, one thing that I am just beginning to do, I have hired and our deputy mayor for public safety will be starting soon. My deputy mayor for community safety has already started. And one of the things that we're going to do, and we're going to spend the rest of the year doing it, is we're going to go to all of the neighborhoods in the city. We're going to do polling, we're going to do surveys, we're going to do community meetings, both in person and hybrid, so that we can get a sense from Angelenos, what do Angelenos need to feel safe? And frankly, neighborhoods are as diverse as our city. People have a lot of different ideas about what they want in order to feel safe. I feel that that's the best way to have an overall strategy for Los Angeles. For example, in some communities, they want to see a lot of programming for youth. They want to see the type of programs that deter people from getting involved in gangs or violence. We need after-school programs for older young people because we tend to think culturally that childcare ends at elementary school. You just call it differently, in my opinion, but I think it should go until you graduate high school.
Thank you.
Mayor, thank you so much for your
You're
time.
welcome.
I know you have to leave,
I do.
but I do appreciate it. Can we thank the mayor for her
Very
time
welcome.
tonight? Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you all.
There'll be more opportunities for questions. Just the mayor has another engagement she must get to. The elected officials that are here are also here, so you are welcome to continue to ask them questions. It's my pleasure now to call on our CFO and COO, Ivan Wilkind, to introduce the law enforcement portion of tonight's program.
Thank you, Noah. Thanks very much, and thank you to all of you for being here tonight. As Noah said, my name is Ivan Wilkind, and I'm the Chief Operating and Financial Officer at Jewish Federation. And I also helped to found, 10 years ago, the Jewish Federation's Community Security Initiative. And in a few minutes, as Noah said, I'm going to introduce our partners from law enforcement who are here today. Some of them are going to get up and speak to us. To just introduce the people who are here, we have the Chief of LAPD, Michael Moore. We have two of the chiefs, deputy chiefs here today, David Kowalski and Blake Chow. We have our new LA County Sheriff, Robert Luna. Thanks for being here, sir. We have the FBI Assistant Director in Charge, Donald Alway, and Assistant Special Agent in charge of the local field office here, Jake Rudy. Thank you for being here. And we have Jake Chemerinsky, Chief of the Violent and Organized Crime Section for the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Central District of California. So obviously, it's vitally important, and we've had many rounds of applause, completely appropriately so, to thank our partners in the law enforcement community for being here. I work very, very closely with law enforcement through CSI, through our Community Security Initiative. I myself am a sworn LAPD reserve officer. I work with the FBI. I chair a national organization called InfraGard with 80,000 members across the country working with the FBI to have a flow of information between the private and public sector. But before we get on to law enforcement, I want to talk about CSI, our Community Security Initiative. CSI, we have 5 full-time employees at Federation. A number of them are here today. These are professionals, many of them with military backgrounds, headed up by Jason Dice. Jason, if you'll raise your hand. Jason has a mere 21 years in the United States Marine Corps, including multiple deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. So thank you for your service, Jason. What do we do at CSI? CSI has a number of core programs. We train, and we have trained more than 8,000 individuals in our community on how to be situationally aware, how to understand when an organization may be under surveillance, may be under attack. What are the pre-incident indicators that could suggest that something bad is about to happen in an organization? The other thing that we do is we communicate. We have 550 Jewish nonprofit organizations in this city that we work with, and we send very, very specific geolocated information when there's something that we feel that those organizations need to know about that directly affects them. We carry out site assessments at Jewish organizations to look for ways that we can help the Jewish organization to improve their security stance. We also have something we call Project Safe Classroom. 78% of Jewish classrooms in this city have a lockdown bag in the classroom, and the teachers and the faculty at those schools have been trained on how to use them in the event, God forbid, that there's an incident in a Jewish school that will necessitate a lockdown. We also have Shabbos Link, a device that we've created ourselves, that we've put in places that are Shomer Shabbos, where individuals working in those places, worshiping in those places where they won't pick up the phone, where they won't receive an email, can have a pager device so that we can communicate with those individuals. Why do we do this? The reason we do this is because we feel at CSI, we feel at Jewish Federation that it begins with us. It begins with the community. It's incumbent on each of us to take responsibility for our own security. If you belong to a Jewish institution, ask the people who run the institution, have you had a training? Have you sent staff along to be trained by CSI? If not, why not? If you belong to any congregation or to any school, reach out to us at CSI and ask us to have a training where you, as parents in a school, you as congregants in a house of worship, can be trained on how you can take responsibility, how we as a community can take responsibility for furthering and being responsible for our security and that of our community. So please take those steps. Now I'm going to hand over to my other boss, obviously Noah's my boss, my other boss, Chief of Police Michael Moore, to give some comments. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. Would you guys like to stand just for a moment? You've been sitting for an hour and 15 minutes or so. Maybe let some blood get back to your legs. There you go. All right, and while you're standing, look to the left, look to the right, and thank that person for coming out here tonight and being a part of tonight's response. Don't thank him too much, and sit back down. We're gonna move on. I want to thank Mayor Bass for being here tonight, as well as Councilman President Krikorian, our city attorney, our board of supervisors, as well as our other city attorney, city councilwoman Yaroslavsky. The elected leaders that are here speak to their standing in unity with you and with all of us. I also want to thank Sheriff Robert Luna. A very long day for this man. A true partner when it comes to the public safety of the city of Los Angeles and this entire region. Also a partner that's here tonight is Don Alway, the federal FBI ADIC, which is the assistant director in charge. So he runs the Los Angeles office, which essentially runs the FBI resources for all of Southern California. Don, thank you for being here as well. For the communities that are here tonight, and I recognize we have some from the San Fernando Valley as well as the West Side and maybe Mid-City, I also want to recognize that we have the leadership team here that is more ground level, local, and related to you. And you should know them. They're individuals that you depend on and I depend on us working together for the common goal, the shared responsibility of public safety. Assistant Chief Robert Marino is over our operations. He's joined by Deputy Chief Blake Chow, who oversees the western part of the city. Captain Sonia Monaco for the Wilshire area. And Captain Craig Heredia from the West LA area. Now tonight, there is a portion of questions and answers. The questions that may stem from the incidents that happened, the 2 tragic shootings from last week, the arrest of that individual whose name I will not identify because I'm not going to give him that space. And those facts and circumstances, we have much that's been in the public space on that, and I encourage you to read that, and if you're not aware of facts and circumstances, tonight we're going to be limited in what we provide you. Because I'm grateful that on Thursday night, my conversation with the U.S. Attorney was his forceful statement that he would be filing federal hate charges Friday, an aggressive pursuit of justice. So the events that took place beginning on Wednesday and then into Thursday was a combination of technology, was a combination of just hard work by the men and women of the Los Angeles Police Department, by not only the actions of the patrol officers, but also the detectives that responded and worked through the evening, and it took as long as it took to identify, and on Thursday, within hours of that second shooting, had this man in custody because the long arm of the law, as they say, concludes Cathedral City. And our effort as a region to work unified and recognizing the threats to our homeland are not often or only coming from our local neighborhoods, that we have travelers and we have people who come to this great city in order for themselves to express their hate or express the threats to the homeland. Person who's in charge of, for the department side, coordinating and our relationships with all the agencies in Southern California, as well as national and international, is our Chief of Counterterrorism Special Operations Bureau, and that's Deputy Chief Dave Kowalski, and he's here tonight as well. So much has been said tonight about hate is a weed, and we are in a garden. And when we see the weeds that grow, that they starve off the very nature of our existence. They starve off the rights of individuals. They starve off the pleasures that God's given to us. And that weeds can be prevented through education. No one is born hating someone. It is a product of a society in which we live in. And it is fed and nurtured, now more than ever, through social media. It is fed and nurtured in an environment that has individuals suffering from mental illness and social disorders. And they see the evidence of tolerance of such hateful rhetoric in social media today like never before. And it's actuators. And so on the prevention side of the house, education is going to be key. Education, and on the parents' part, your resilience, and not letting those few voices outspeak the audience of this room tonight. Because as I look around here, you're many, many hundredfold higher in authority and right and in the power to change our society for the better because of your beliefs and the things that you do in your own home. So the point of that, though, is as we recognize it, our elected officials that are here, please continue to work with them to foster education, to foster the marketing and the outreach and engagement, because the naysayers are definitely taking advantage that any individual, it used to be said in your grandma's basement, can go onto social media and can go viral. I have a flyer here for an event that speaks to this. There's a National Day of Hate that was announced on the 4th of January by a group out of Iowa. They want to have a mass anti-Semitic action, a day of hate. They want to do this on the 25th of February, a week from Saturday. And they want to use stickers and banner drops and any other level of intimidation. And they're encouraging the fringe to take photographs of it, to perpetuate it. They speak from a point of weakness. They speak from a position of a lack of any moral authority. But the atmosphere in which we live in today, that soil, feeds the weed of hatred because it is a nectar to this. It activates individuals who would otherwise stay in those dark places, as the mayor referenced, and not crawl out into the light. So what's critical for us is that as we work with our elected officials, is that they're funding and prioritizing efforts for education, for awareness, for solidarity, for the fact that we all stand together as a community. There is no better place than Los Angeles for this. I want to thank Capri Maddox as the head of our Human Rights Civil Rights Division. Her work and her department's work is about this education. It's about fostering and furthering it and taking the whole of our society and amplifying it. And we, as was said earlier, we only enjoy this by the fact that we're willing to invest in it with our time and our energy. It is not a birthright. It is not passed from one generation to another. It is fought for. It has to be protected. Our garden has to recognize that the environment is there for the weeds to grow. Also, from the department standpoint, the enforcement, we're also here to pull the weeds. But our efforts need to start not when it's a shooting. They need to start with the incident of a hate that begins as a seedling, begins as a small sprout that thinks it can break the surface and enjoy the sunlight, and it grows. Instances of hate in Los Angeles outnumber hate crimes, but both are terribly underreported. You live in a city that we investigate hate instances, instances that are not effectively a crime, but their rhetoric, the hate speak, the purpose is to intimidate. The purpose is to threaten people's sense of safety and security. And those individuals, if left unchallenged, grow into individuals who progress into acts of hate, into vandalism, and then into a criminal threat, and then into a shooting or a mass shooting. So what I'm asking for you today is that as we move forward, is that for you to work and educate your family, your congregation, your school, your social work, that if someone expresses a viewpoint of hate to you, the Los Angeles Police Department wants to know about that. We want to understand who the individual is. We want to understand who's doing the flyer drops. We want to understand who's dropping the leaflets. We want to understand those that are trying to nurture the weeds in the garden. And we will challenge them. And we'll also ensure that they don't have guns, that they don't have the tools of destruction, if they don't have the sensibility and the health and the mental health and the stability to have the right for that privilege. Gun violence restraining orders in Los Angeles, in the state of California, red flags laws in this state are the strongest they are in the country. But they're of little worth if they sit in a toolbox. And we are not made aware of individuals who engage in hateful instances that would allow us to apply the law before judicial authority to restrict people's access to weapons of destruction. Last week, this man had an assault weapon. His destruction could have been tenfold. And yet he will continue to challenge the ways in which guns are acquired. But there's tools on the desk today that we need better utilized. Secondly, when you do report a hate crime or incident, know that it's reviewed through a chain of command to ensure that we're implying added investigative resources. I want to thank Council President Krikorian, the entire City Council. Please. This is a year that while we have had sustained and substantial reduction in the size of our workforce, we're hundreds of fewer officers and civilian personnel, it is at a council that is supporting the rebuilding of this organization as the city moves from this COVID emergency and regains the place in a safer community with a larger, better trained, better equipped workforce. They've already done it this year, and I'm encouraged by Mayor Bass and our council leadership that we're going to continue rebuilding this department so that we can better provide for the safety of all Angelenos. Moving forward, if you're a member of and here anyone in Los Angeles and you're not a volunteer with us, I'm asking you to be one. We have more than 2,000 community volunteers today that come to work, if you will, across 21 stations. If you can give a day, you can give half a day, if you can give a couple days a week. We can give you a little bit of training. We'll not let you do traffic enforcement. You'll be making no arrests. But you will be our eyes and ears. And you can help us in the shortage of personnel by calling back victims, by reaching and providing for services at a station that frankly right now is taking a police officer out of the street. And it also provides you with a better understanding of how we are policing this city and how we're working with you towards a better and safer Los Angeles. Lastly, as I close, last Thursday, when we saw that second shooting happen, I want to commend these men that immediately moved, and women who immediately moved, added resources. We are a scarce department. There are finite resources. But we do surge, and we do constantly, every day, over a period of days, move resources to the challenges that are at hand before us. And those resources were moved on Thursday. They continued through the Sabbath, and they'll continue this week and into next. Should there be someone who believes this was their calling, this was some moment for them to step forward and to be a continued threat to the community, we have no specific or any credible threat in anyone's doing the copycat last week's terrible assaults. But we also recognize the potential could be there. And so for that reason, we have redeployed these resources to focus on the Pico Robinson and the Fairfax community. Also, in communities such as the San Fernando Valley, in the Valley Village, and Sherman Oaks, where we know that we have other communities of the Jewish faith that frequent those areas. We recognize that you can go to Yelp and find a kosher market. So we recognize that as we look across Los Angeles, that our communities that we've identified, we need to be mindful that the diversity of Los Angeles is throughout all of LA. It's not just going to be West LA. It's not just Wilshire. We'll continue that into this next week. I will tell you that for this event that I talked about, the power of social media, it's an event that's not trending. I probably have brought more attention to it today than anywhere else in Los Angeles. But it's meant to do this. If you see that in your social media feed, push back against it. Don't allow it to go unchallenged. I'm not asking for you to call for rhetoric of force or violence. Please don't do that. But do engage in dismissing it. And anyone, famous figure or otherwise, should be boycotted for when they will not take a stance against such hateful rhetoric. That's a call to action. God bless you, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Chief. We have a few more speakers, and we're gonna make it very, very brief because I know that we're running out of time, but we do have some people we want to hear from. Our new LA County Sheriff has only been sheriff for 2 months, Sheriff Luna, and during that time I've met him at 3 different Jewish events. So he is a friend of our community, and please welcome Sheriff Luna.
Mike Moore, you're a very hard act to follow. I just want to make a couple of comments because I know the night is running short. One, I do want to congratulate the Los Angeles Police Department and the FBI for their quick work. Yeah. On the incident that Mike talked about, for us in law enforcement, specifically here in Southern California, when it comes to hate crime, hate incident response, we don't mess around. And I could tell you this as your sheriff, that when we've been involved recently in the last 2 months that I've been in office, the question constantly gets asked when an incident does happen, is this hate crime related? I could tell you that probably 3 or 4 years ago, that question wasn't always asked. So I can assure you this, that for me, sitting in my position, you will have a partner, somebody who listens, doesn't always get caught up in the parameters of, well, this is the law and this is what we can do and this is what we can't do, because I firmly believe there's always something we can do. So when it comes to anti-Semitic hate or just hate in general, and that's where I'm just going to take it for a second, okay, because from a law enforcement perspective, we'll do everything we can, we'll continue to learn, and we'll continue to evolve. But here's the thing. I can stand up here and have the courage to tell you I don't always have the answers. And what we're talking about is very serious. And let me just for a second take it away from law enforcement, and some of the speakers up here have spoken about this, is when I talk about what a great job LAPD and the FBI did about a hate crime response, do you maybe think because we had to do that, maybe there's already a failure somewhere? And the failure is in the lack of education. Are we looking at this from an appropriate perspective, that we're not handling it in the schools and we're not handling as a mental health issue? Because even for me, sitting here learning for the last 45 minutes or so, I'm thinking as a sheriff, why isn't it that somebody who's in LA County Jail, before they get out, get a class in hate? Is that something that we can do? Maybe through the court system, when somebody gets charged with a crime and a judge is handing out their sentence, is it something that we should mandate? At the end of the day, it is absolutely our responsibility as a community to come together and send a message that hate is not acceptable. One, I get it that people are afraid. There are things that have happened that make us afraid. But once we say we're afraid, what have we just done? We've told the other side that it's worked, and that's not good. And then I speak to my friends in the media, although nobody here with a camera is responsible because you're just doing your job. If I told each and every one of you that I loved you and I want to work with you, would that make headlines? But if I said something up here filled with hate, would it immediately go all over this country? We have a lesson to be learned there. Do not give people who are promoting hate those headlines. We got to figure out a way, because until we do that, nothing is going to change. Not one thing is going to change. We have to hold people accountable for words, because words matter. Those are political figures, those are law enforcement figures, those are everybody across the board, and until we do that, nothing's going to change. I am a partner. I'm here with you. I will continue to fight with you. I'll do everything I can to make sure that you are safe, but we need to do a better job, and we need to do it together.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. And now I'm going to call up our last two speakers to give us couple of remarks. The FBI Assistant Director in Charge, Don Alway, and Jeff Chemerinsky from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Thank you.
Well, thank you. On behalf of the men and women of the FBI Los Angeles, which covers the 7 counties from the Monterey County line down to San Diego, what I can tell you unequivocally is we are invested in the community's safety and partnership. So what I can tell you, I know we're running out of time, there are 2 things from a numerical standpoint that I think are important. One is in 2019, this office formed a hate crimes task force. There are 6 agencies that are formal members. 2 of those are led by the LAPD and the LA Sheriff, so I want to thank them for their contributions to that task force. But I want to commend the Beverly Hills, the Glendale, Burbank, and the U.S. Attorney's Office for their formal partnership, as well as numerous other organizations and departments that are committed to assisting in this endeavor. In 2021, the FBI made civil rights a national threat priority. This means that all 56 offices around the country are committed to looking at civil rights as a top-tier program. Within the civil rights program, hate crimes is our #1 priority. What I can say is that we thrive in partnerships, everything from the joint terrorism, counterintelligence, and hate crime task force membership, of which sometimes we are members and sometimes we host, is the key to success for the FBI. And we look forward to continued partnership with all of you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Chemerinsky. I'm the Chief of the Violent Crime Section from the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'm happy to be here tonight with all of you, and I'm very thankful to the Jewish Federation for hosting this event. Along with the Jewish Federation, I also want to acknowledge Jeff Abrams from the ADL, who's here tonight and has done just absolutely terrific work on behalf of these causes. Along with being a federal prosecutor and the chief of the Violent Crime Section, I'm also a Jew, and so these causes and these issues strike very deeply to me. I'm proud that just this week, our office hosted a Holocaust survivor, and more than 125 federal prosecutors came to listen to that story. So these issues are very important to us, and the cause remains ongoing. I've experienced firsthand what Rabbi Farkas remarked on at the beginning tonight, which is I went to a Jewish school not far from here. We had an unarmed crossing guard as our only security. My 2 younger children both went to Jewish preschools that was kept within a gate with armed security guards with walkie-talkies that checked every single person who came into the building. It's sad to see how this has come to pass, and I'm so happy and thankful that there are events like this and dialogues that are ongoing about what we can do as a community to address these causes. Again, thank you all so much for being here tonight. Thank you to the elected officials for their important remarks, and thank you to law enforcement for all your efforts in combating these crimes. Thank you.
I want to thank Congresswoman, who I know also has to leave, as well as Assemblymember Brian. Thank you for coming tonight. Before you leave, though, I want to introduce and bring up our Consul General, Hillel Newman, who is going to introduce a very special friend from the State of Israel.
Shalom. Thank you, Rabbi Farkas, the Jewish Federation. I won't mention everybody due to the time. I just mention, of course, law enforcement authorities, Chief Moore, Sheriff, elected officials. Thank you all for joining. As the senior representative of the State of Israel here in Los Angeles, living only 2 kilometers from here and 1 kilometer from the shooting, I just want to say that we were also shocked and dismayed at the shootings. And we stand in solidarity, and I can say that as the representative of the State of Israel, we stand in solidarity with the Jewish community here in LA. I don't know whether I can speak on behalf of the Israeli Americans, but you mentioned that there are 750,000 Jews. We estimate that there are between 200 and 250,000 Israeli Americans in the LA County area, which means that we are talking about a quarter, a third perhaps, unless the Jewish community is larger. So they're also a stakeholder, but I also represent the State of Israel, and I want to tell you that the State of Israel stands in solidarity and cares. I have been here now 3 years, and during these 3 years, I've seen attacks on Jews on the streets in LA, like the sushi restaurant, graffiti, vandalizing, flyers, and now this shooting. So I just want to share with you the 2 lessons that we know from our history. And that is that there is such a short distance between verbal incitement and physical attacks. There's such a short distance between the burning of books and the burning of flesh. And also our second lesson is that we cannot be on the defensive. We have to go to the offensive as well. Israel cares and assumes this responsibility for the entire Jewish world. We see the Jewish communities as family, and we see ourselves as bonded in a bond of blood, Brit Damim. The Ministry of Diaspora embodies that commitment. And I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Minister Shikli, our Minister of Diaspora and the Minister also of Social Equality in Israel. I had the honor of meeting Minister Shikli just 2 months ago, and I was deeply impressed by his character, the fact that he is frank and straightforward and truly cares. It is now 4 a.m. in Israel, and he is connecting online in order to be with the community. I'd just like to mention that he's not the classic politician. He was an officer in the elite units of the Golani Brigade, connected to law enforcement perhaps, an educator who is heavily involved in educating in Israel, and he is a leader in the State of Israel. It is my honor to introduce Minister Shikli. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Consul General Newman. Thank you, the Mayor, Karen Bass, the Chief of the LAPD, Moore, Sheriff Luna, elected officials, and obviously the head of the Federation, Rabbi Farkas, who invited me to this very important conversation. I think that this crisis and this very severe incident is also an opportunity to strengthen the communities, to empower education for tolerance and for true liberal values that allows every individual and every community to fully express itself in the classroom, in the playground, in the campus, and in the synagogue. I think that we should see this incident in a wide context. And unfortunately, as research that we've seen, anti-Semitism is on the rise in the US. We have 94% of the Jews in the US that are saying that they're seeing the rise of anti-Semitism, and 42% that actually experienced anti-Semitism themselves or their close family and friends. we've seen many incidents in the past year. We just had a violent incident in New Jersey 2 weeks ago. We had a violent demonstration in the University of Michigan, and we have anti-Semitism in campuses such as Berkeley, and so on. Anti-Semitism today is sophisticated. Sometimes it hides behind the mask of human rights discussions. It infiltrates academy, it infiltrates even high schools. It starts with words, but as we've seen, it also leads to actions. Anti-Semitism is an attack on identity, and it's an attack on liberty. And the thing that we are worried about is that we will see what happened in Sweden happening in the US. And now what happened in Sweden is that because of assaults and attacks like we've seen in LA last week, Jews stopped walking to their community center, to synagogues, and their communities were heavily damaged, and some of them were even closed. And this, it needs to be understood that the physical security is extremely important, but not less important is to fight anti-Semitism in the education, in high schools, in campuses. It was the Minister of Justice in Britain a few years ago, Michael Moore, said that what starts with the Jews never ends with the Jews. I think we share both the American community, the American nation, and we, the State of Israel, we share the value of freedom, and we share the belief in a man that was created in the shape of God. And we will do, as a state, whatever we can to assist, to support, and Rabbi Farkash, and obviously our council, we will coordinate the efforts to do whatever we can to empower any efforts that you can do as a city and also as a Jewish community to fight anti-Semitism. And we are here at your service, and we care about you. And we are very thankful for the mayor and for the representative of the LAPD for this very important event, which is not taken for granted. Thank you.
Amichai, I don't know if you can hear me or see me, but I want to thank you on behalf of the Los Angeles Jewish community for being up so late at night or early in the morning, and we certainly feel the support and love of our brethren in the state of Israel. So thank you so very much. I'll go get some rest before the sun comes up. It's really nice to have you with us. This is a town hall, so we have one or two more questions, Dan, and then that's for anyone, and then we will wrap up and close the evening.
The first question, we'll have just a couple questions. I know we're pressed for time. I want to ask the assembly members, Gabriel and Brian. I'll ask you guys together, since you came up together, how can we reunite the Black and Jewish communities after a lot of things that have been in the news that we all know, things that have happened? What can we do together?
That's a powerful question. Here in Los Angeles, we've always had a deep history of solidarity between Black and Jewish communities. It's funny, I got a text from my staff about 15 minutes ago. So we got to pull you in 5 minutes for a Black History Month event. And I just responded, no. This is important. This is what solidarity looks like. I'm grateful that Jesse and I always get called up together. Part of the way we continue to build those relationships is we build the bridges between our communities, right? We get to learn each other in a deeper sense. I had my first Shabbat dinner in Jaffa with Jesse and my fiance. Jesse spends time with me in the communities that I'm comfortable in, and we found solidarity and comfort in all communities together because that's what makes Los Angeles special. We're not separated by neighborhood. Pico Robertson is no different than Leimert Park. We want the same healthy, thriving communities, and when we work together, we're going to get those. So in a moment like this, when crisis has hit, crisis has come to our front door, it has come to our houses of worship, we have to push it back, and we have to push it back together. So know that I am here. My staff is here. We are here. Whatever you need from the 55th Assembly District, I've got your back.
We are so fortunate to have leaders like Isaac Bryan, a younger generation, a new generation of leaders in the Black community that are so interested in reinvigorating the incredible friendship between the Black and Jewish communities. And I'm looking over here, I saw, you can clap for that, yes. Mark Spall was here. Dr. Mark Spall was the head of D. Toledo High School in West Hills in my district. And when you walk into that district and walk into their school, one of the first things you see is this beautiful picture of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel marching arm in arm with Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King. And it is a reminder for our young people about what's important and what we have to do as Jews and what we're called to do as Jews, but it's also a reminder of these tremendous allyship that we have built that has sustained us and that needs nurturing and love. It's been interesting to me. You know, I live in Encino, and I drop my kids off at Valley Beth Shalom at our synagogue for school, and I can drive down Ventura Boulevard past Judaica shops and go have lunch at Tel Aviv Grill. And if you live in Encino or you live in Pico Robertson, you might think that everybody in the state of California knows about Jews or understands our issues, but it turns out that's not the case. And I sometimes have to remind my colleagues there are more Latinos in the state of California than Jews in the world. I'll say that again. There are more Latinos in the state of California than there are Jews in the world. And it turns out, as I talk with a lot of my colleagues up in Sacramento, most of them represent communities with functionally no Jewish community, with no Jewish population. We're lucky here in Los Angeles. We have each other. We have congregated here. And so many of them, there are many people, even in California in 2023, that know very little about the Jewish community. And that ignorance breeds fear. That ignorance can breed hatred, and that is part of what we have to do. And so we are very, very lucky when we have allies in the community like Assemblymember Bryan who are intentional about wanting to reach out and wanting to build bridges, wanting to understand our hopes and our fears and all of the work that we have to do. And we have a responsibility also to meet them there. And so we're very fortunate that Isaac came to Israel with us this summer on a trip that was sponsored in part by the Jewish Federation, came openly with an open heart to learn, to understand, to come to Yad Vashem, to come to community events like this, and we have a responsibility, the same thing, to go and to strengthen the relationship with people of all ethnicities and backgrounds, but particularly with the Black community, where we have so much in common and where we have such an history of shared struggle. So we are doing that work at the elected level. We're very fortunate to have partners like the AJC and the ADL that are doing it, and we're going to continue to do it. So thank you.
Assemblymember Gabriel, quick follow-up. A lot of folks were responding to Chief Moore. Thank you, Assemblymember Bryant. We're responding to Chief Moore, talking about education. Maybe just a couple words on what you and the Jewish Caucus are doing to ensure that legislation revolving around education covers these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things that I'll mention. So first of all, as you heard, we have formally established through legislation, Jewish Caucus, a statewide commission on the state of hate, bringing together experts in all of these fields to talk about this. We have also established a commission on Holocaust and genocide education, funding research now to go into school districts around the state to understand how Holocaust education is being taught or not being taught, because as any of you have seen the polling, and AJC and ADL have done incredible polling on this, the number of millennials that don't know what the Holocaust is, that don't know what Auschwitz was, is shocking. It is shockingly high, and so we have to teach people that history. We are going to do that in a very powerful way here in the state of California. We've also done this through our partnership. We have put tens of millions of dollars in the state budget to help our community institutions like the Museum of Tolerance, like the LA Museum of the Holocaust Museums, and other parts of the state. The other thing that I want to touch on, though, that Chief Moore brought up is the work we have to do online. I think any of us who've been online understand that the spread of tremendous anti-Semitic propaganda online is shocking, right? You don't have to spend much time online to see this. And by the way, hate and bigotry against other communities as well. So we worked very closely with Jeff Abrams at the ADL to pass a bill last year, major national priority for the ADL, passed here in California, Assembly Bill 587, that is going to go into effect in a few months. It will be the first time ever that major social media companies, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, others, are going to be required to open up their books about what they're doing to crack down on hate online. The first time ever, and that's something we've done here in the state of California. Because we know, as was mentioned, people put out information in there, and when there's ignorance, people don't know Jews, that can have often deadly consequences. So we're very, very grateful to the ADL and the AJC and Federation, our community partners that are helping us to do that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Assembly Gabriel. No, I'm actually going to ask Chief Moore and Ivan a joint question. There was lots of questions revolving the process to identify what happened as a hate crime, what gets put out in the news. I know you cannot share, Chief Moore, the specifics, but a process question of how our community can best understand what's happening, to understand what the stakes are, and then Ivan, maybe a follow-up on what CSI's role in that. And a lot of folks are wondering what private businesses, even apartment buildings, can do to get involved with CSI.
So let me say, in regards to that hate crime, we've expanded the definition of what constitutes a hate crime here in LAPD in these last few years. Historically, it's been, or there are elements within the crime itself, the actions of the individual, that indicates that race or other identities was a motivating factor. Today, it's, is there any evidence that it was any type, it provided any type of motivation, that played any role in the person going about? Last week, the individual was explicit in his efforts to target Jews, and he gave ample evidence of that. But we started that investigation as a hate crime on the first shooting, meaning, is this being motivated? Was this person targeted because he was coming from a house of worship and had the identity of being identified as a Jew? And so we are erring on the side of caution. Sheriff Luna spoke of that earlier. It's a shift of mindset that we think is necessary to ensure that we nothing slips through the cracks. Lastly, and you didn't ask me this, but I feel really bad if I didn't mention it tonight. Just as we're asking for volunteers and community members, and recognize that you could be in that community as a set of eyes and ears. You could be on a safe passage, just rolling through those areas, and just allowing others to see that we're in this together. You're in a city car, city electricity, they're electric cars. But we can have you there as an added layer. But as important as that is the technology. The mayor referenced it. As she's moving about through each of the cities, neighbors in our cities, we know that there are communities that want more cameras, that want to see more public surveillance. This case was solved in part because of that. And it can be even stronger with all of your help and assistance. Now, there's civil libertarians and there's civil rights that needs to be afforded and protected, which we will do. But make no mistake about it, the technology of what can be accessed within the neighborhoods should be something that a neighborhood identifies as a desire and need. And as a city, we're looking to add more automated license plate readers. These are cameras that actually track the movement, see and record the movements of vehicles, so that if a vehicle is identified as being involved in a shooting or involved in an act of vandalism or hate, we can enter that and we can find out where that vehicle has traveled. I want you to recognize that those systems exist today and that license plate readers are used in databases by vehicle repossessors all the time. And that's how they find those cars. But too often, LAPD and local law enforcement, we've not had access. One of the mayor's major initiatives, working with us and us with the mayor, is to visit neighborhoods who have a desire to increase those means of capturing that information so that we can solve the crime. I want to call out Beverly Hills, Mark Stainbrook, the chief of police there. We had a representative here earlier. They have done a tremendous job on that. And in fact, they were part of our investigation last week when we had information about a vehicle that we believed was involved in this. So we need your help, both in volunteerism, but we also need your help in working with our local captains about having more eyes and ears out there to help us solve these crimes, and they will deter others. There is a scarecrow effect here. You know, there's a famous line from Ocean's 11, I see there's no cameras in this room. Right? When people see cameras, it's why you have them, it's why we use them. They can both deter as well as help solve.
Thank you, Chief. And also, look, very briefly, what can we do? Why should we be involved as a community? We keep talking about hate crime charges and federal civil rights charges that might sit on top of any sentence that someone gets for a crime. That will increase the amount of time that a bad guy is going to spend in prison. Okay, so we, as a community, can help in order to prove that this is a hate crime. One thing that is very, very useful in doing that is showing a past pattern of that type of behavior. If you or anyone you know receives an email with hate speech in it, even if that might be protected speech under the Constitution, report that, send it to CSI, send it to law enforcement, and then, God forbid, that individual goes on to do something that we're looking to show is a hate crime, that will be a part of the evidence to add that hate crime rider to those charges. And then very, very briefly, how can you get involved in CSI? CSI@jewishla.org. Reach out to us. That will be answered by a human being. Reach out, and we will help you to help us. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, and we're just going to, just one word to wrap. On the screens here, you'll see some resources that I think would be really important for you to look at, including, I can't see them from here, but you see there are a series of resources, including with our partners over at the ADL, and please take those down if you can. And just one word to close, because it's really important. This part is perhaps one of the most important things. The future of our work here in LA has to be one of collaboration. It has to be one where we work together. This idea that we can all figure out how to fight anti-Semitism on our own, I don't think it's proven out. I don't think it was a proved concept. And so we have to shift and start working together. Those who want to see us undone are much more coordinated than we are ourselves. And we started an experiment with the ADL, with the AJC, with the LA Museum of the Holocaust, and now with the Board of Rabbis, to start a roundtable, to begin having these discussions and coordinating our responses in a multivocal way. This is what the future of our work looks like. This is what the future of Federation work looks like. And I want to invite you, if you are interested as a community leader, if you're here or you talk to your community leaders, start thinking about how 1 + 1 = 3. And how do we come together and create a never-before-seen national model where that we are working together to fight against hate, because that is how it works in America. And I want to thank Jeffrey Abrams, my partner at the ADL, Rick Herstadt, my partner at the AJC, Beth Keene, who is the head of the LA Museum of the Holocaust, who couldn't be here, and Rabbi Sarah Haransky, head of the Board of Rabbis, that make up the core of this roundtable. And as we go forward, just make sure that we understand that together we are stronger and divided we are not. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Thank you so much for coming.